The desert wind howls, a mournful lament across the expanse of the Sinai, carrying the scent of dust and the heavy weight of destiny. Before the tent stood, before the laws were etched, and before the world knew them as a nation, there were only 12 brothers standing at the edge of an abyss. Imagine, if you will, the twilight hour in a land defined by shifting sands. A patriarch, old and weary, his vision fading into the eternal, yet his spirit burning with a clarity that pierced the veil of time itself. As Jacob gathered his sons, the air grew thick with a silence so profound it felt like the breath of eternity.
He was not merely speaking to his children. He was assigning the foundational architecture for a people who would eventually span the breadth of history.
The air was electric, charged with the gravity of spoken fate. Why do some lineages rise to command the tides of history, while others dissolve into the desert air? It is a question that lingers long after the embers of that ancient hearth have cooled. Here, in the flickering light, the blueprint of a civilization was being drawn, not in ink, but in the indelible mark of prophetic inheritance. Consider the complexity of this familial mosaic. They were not a singular, monolithic entity. They were 12 distinct temperaments, 12 divergent paths, each forged in the crucible of sibling rivalry, profound jealousy, and the eventual, agonizing reconciliation that defined their youth. Reuben, the firstborn, felt the shifting sands of his own impetuous nature, his influence waning like a moon obscured by gathering clouds. Simeon and Levi, two forces of kinetic energy, represented the raw, unbridled spirit that demanded justice yet struggled with the boundaries of restraint. These were not merely men. They were the archetypes of human struggle, each embodying a trait that would later characterize the tribe bearing their name.
As the patriarch's voice rose, weaving through the tents, he touched upon the essence of Judah.
It was here, in this singular moment, that the trajectory of royal authority was crystallized. The imagery was stark, a young lion rising from the prey, a symbol of dominion that would endure through the rise and fall of countless dynasties. This was the birth of a governing soul, the emergence of a leadership structure that would hold the disparate threads of the brotherhood together when the storms of time threatened to tear them asunder. The weight of his words settled upon them, a mantle that would be carried through the centuries, through the shadow of captivity, and into the light of sovereign identity. The transition from a nomadic familial unit to a structured national identity was a process of intense alchemy. In the vast, uncivilized wilderness, they were forced to confront the harsh reality of survival. The geography of their existence dictated the evolution of their character. Those who gravitated toward the verdant plains were shaped by the rhythms of the earth, while those who stood upon the jagged mountain ridges were molded by the austerity of the heights. This was not an accidental scattering. It was the unfolding of a master design, where each tribe found its natural orientation within the greater whole. The encampment in the wilderness served as the grand stage for this transformation. As the tabernacle became the heartbeat of their society, the tribes were arranged in a deliberate configuration, a celestial geometry that reflected their inner harmony. Each brother stood at his assigned station, a living testament to the unity that can arise from diverse origins. They were the architects of an order that transcended their individual flaws. The memory of the past, of the brothers' betrayal, the cloak stained with false sorrow, and the long, arduous journey into the unknown was transmuted into a collective strength. It was a metamorphosis from a house of discord into a sanctuary of shared purpose. Observe the quiet intensity of Issachar, the quiet observer, or the restless ambition of Zebulun, whose eyes were forever fixed upon the horizon of the great sea. These were not random assignments. They were the inherent tendencies of the men, magnified and refined by the trials they endured together. The genius of this formation lay in its recognition that a nation is not a singular note, but a chord. It is not a flat plane, but a multifaceted structure. Each tribe possessed a unique spiritual DNA, a specific frequency of influence that, when played in concert, produced the resonance of a kingdom. The brilliance of this legacy lies in how it balances individual distinctiveness with communal obligation.
The patriarch's final address was a catalyst, igniting the spark of self-awareness within each son.
They understood, perhaps for the first time, that their existence was tethered to a larger continuity. The desert, with its infinite silence, stripped away the trivialities of the ego, leaving only the raw, essential components of their character. It was the forging of a national character in the furnace of isolation. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the desert in hues of violet and gold, the assembly began to disperse, yet the air remained resonant. The seeds of history had been sown. They would walk into the vast unknown, bearing the weight of their respective inheritances, each stride an assertion of their place in a narrative that would eventually span the globe. They were brothers, yes, but they had evolved into something far more enduring. They were the foundational pillars of a civilization, each representing a unique facet of the human experience. Their story is our story, a constant, rhythmic oscillation between the discord of our individual natures and the necessity of coming together to build something that outlasts the fragile breath of a single lifetime. And in that, the ancient, dusty desert of the past offers a mirror to our own uncertain, forward-moving futures. The majesty of a nation is not found in its borders, but in the harmony of its constituent parts. As the 12 tribes coalesced into a singular identity, they ceased to be merely kin and became the specialized organs of a grand, living body. This was not a structure built on the uniformity of the masses, but rather on the exquisite precision of diversity. Within this intricate social tapestry, each tribe functioned as a unique pillar, carrying a specific weight of the national burden, ensuring that the architecture of their society remained resilient against the erosive forces of time. At the epicenter of this administrative and spiritual hierarchy stood the tribe of Levi. They were the architects of the sacred, tasked with the preservation of the law and the maintenance of the intangible link between the temporal and the eternal. To reside in Levi was to forego the comforts of territorial land ownership, choosing instead a life of intellectual and spiritual stewardship. They were the heartbeat of the collective, moving among the other tribes not as rulers of territory, but as custodians of conscience. Through their service, they ensured that the national compass remained true, navigating the turbulent waters of cultural evolution with the steady hand of tradition. Contrasting this spiritual focus was the commanding authority of Judah. If Levi was the conscience, Judah was the hand of governance. Destiny had woven a narrative of leadership into their very fabric. As the cradle of royal lineage, they were tasked with the responsibility of direction, the art of forging a cohesive path forward. The symbol of the lion, long associated with their name, was not a mere emblem of dominance, but a metaphor for the focused, courageous clarity required to lead a diverse people. They held the scales of justice and the staff of the shepherd, tasked with the heavy work of unity. Their strength was not found in their own ego, but in their capacity to hold the common interest of the other 11 tribes in balance. Yet, a nation requires more than the head and the heart. It requires the strength of the shield and the ingenuity of the provider. The tribes of Gad and Benjamin emerged as the sentinels of the frontier. They were the embodiment of vigilance, a psychological and physical barrier against the encroaching shadows of the outside world. Their lives were defined by the discipline of the watchtower and the courage of the defender. In their stoicism, they provided the security that allowed the rest of the nation to flourish in peace. It was a role of profound self-sacrifice, where the individual identity was surrendered to the absolute requirement of communal preservation. In the bustling marketplaces of the coastal plains, the tribes of Zebulun and Issachar engaged in a symbiotic dance of intellect and commerce. This pairing remains one of the most compelling examples of functional interdependence in history. Zebulun, with an affinity for the horizons of the sea, acted as the vital artery of trade, reaching out to distant shores to bring the treasures of the world back to the heart of the nation. They were the bridge between the internal stability of the mountains and the vast, unknown possibilities of the wider world. Their ambition was tempered, however, by the profound wisdom of Issachar. While Zebulun sailed the tides, Issachar studied the stars and the scrolls. They were the scholars of the age, masters of timing and strategy, who provided the intellectual framework within which trade could be conducted with justice and foresight. Without the wisdom of Issachar, the prosperity of Zebulun might have become hollow. Without the enterprise of Zebulun, the wisdom of Issachar might have remained confined to the archives. This division of labor was not born of convenience. but of a deep understanding that true excellence is a collective pursuit. It was a masterclass in social design. The richness of their culture was directly proportional to the distinctiveness of each tribe's contribution. When one tribe faltered, the others compensated, a resilience born from the recognition that their destinies were inextricably linked. They were a mosaic, where the beauty of the image depended on the integrity of each individual piece. As we examine this ancient arrangement, we are confronted with a timeless truth about human organization. The tribes were not merely defined by what they possessed, but by what they contributed to the collective well-being. Asher, known for the abundance of their land, provided the sustenance that fueled the growth of the nation. Naphtali, with the swiftness and elegance of a deer, brought the spirit of creativity and rapid movement, ensuring that the culture remained dynamic rather than stagnant. Manasseh and Ephraim, the sons of Joseph, carried the legacy of adaptation, managing the expansion of borders and the management of resources with a visionary scope that looked toward the long-term vitality of the people. This was a symphony of roles. The strength of one was the shield of another. The wisdom of one was the map for another. It was a grand experiment in human cooperation, where the innate personality of the tribe was harnessed for the benefit of the whole. They learned that the most effective leadership is not that which mandates obedience, but that which inspires contribution. In this arrangement, the tension between individual ambition and communal duty was resolved not by suppression, but by the thoughtful assignment of purpose. The tribes of Israel did not simply survive the trials of the ancient world. They flourished because they understood that they were, in truth, one body with 12 essential expressions of life. Their history serves as a powerful testament to the idea that our greatest strengths are those that complement the strengths of others, creating a structure of endurance that can withstand the weight of millennia. The annals of history are not merely records of what was. They are the echoes of what remains. As we draw the final curtain on the saga of the 12 tribes, we find ourselves standing at the precipice of a profound realization. The tale of this ancient brotherhood, moving from the fractured discord of tent life to the orchestrated grandeur of a sovereign nation, is far more than a chronicle of a distant era. It is, in its essence, a mirror held up to the human soul, reflecting the eternal struggle for unity in the face of our own inherent, beautiful complexity. When the great fracture occurred, that seismic shift where the kingdom split into the northern and southern factions, it seemed, to the superficial observer, as though the dream of a unified people had dissolved into the sands of time. The disappearance of the 10 tribes into the vast, churning tides of the Assyrian exile remains one of history's most haunting mysteries. Yet, to view this merely as a loss is to misunderstand the nature of a legacy. They did not simply vanish. They became the seeds of a diaspora, a scattering of influence that would permeate the consciousness of civilizations yet to be born. They transformed from a localized, territorial power into a global current of thought, law, and morality. This is the great resolution of their journey. Unity does not demand the erasure of identity. The brilliance of the tribes lies not in their cohesion under a single banner of uniformity, but in their capacity to maintain their distinct, individual colors while contributing to the radiance of the whole. They teach us that the most enduring structures are those that hold space for diversity. Whether it was the intellectual rigor of Issachar, the administrative grace of Judah, or the spiritual depth of the Levites, each tribe maintained its unique frequency while participating in the symphony of the nation. It is a lesson that echoes across the centuries to our own time, whispering that our differences are not barriers to unity, but the very foundation upon which a truly resilient society is constructed. As we reflect on these archetypes, we begin to see ourselves. We are all, in a sense, inheritors of this legacy, beings of complex, often contradictory traits, seeking to find our station in a world that feels as vast and demanding as the Sinai wilderness. We, too, carry the lion's courage, the scholar's curiosity, and the sentinel's vigilance. The story of the tribes is the story of the human endeavor to transcend our initial divisions, to refine our impulses in the crucible of life, and to eventually contribute something meaningful to the collective. We are all searching for our tribe, our purpose, and the specific role we are destined to play in the grand narrative of our time. The mystery of the lost is not a tragedy. It is an invitation. It invites us to consider that the greatest impacts are often those that become woven into the fabric of the world, invisible yet essential, like the rivers that feed the sea. The specific names may fade from the maps, but the essence of their contribution remains, a living, breathing influence that shapes how we define justice, how we value wisdom, and how we conceive of our duty to one another. The legacy of the tribes is that they survived the collapse of empires because they were built upon principles that could not be conquered. The belief in a higher purpose, the necessity of interdependence, and the courage to remain true to one's inherent nature. So, as we look toward the future, let us carry the wisdom of this ancient tapestry with us. Let us honor the diversity of the voices within our own communities, recognizing that the strength of our collective future relies on our ability to embrace the unique contributions of every individual. We are not meant to be a singular, monotonous note. We are a complex, resonant chord. The echoes of the desert continue to call out to us, urging us to step out of the shadows of our own history and into the light of a shared, intentional future. In the quiet moments of reflection, when the noise of the modern world fades, perhaps we can still hear the distant rhythm of their footsteps, a steady, rhythmic cadence moving toward a horizon that never truly ends. They have laid the foundation. They have provided the blueprint. Now, the task falls to us to continue the work, to build upon the stones they set, and to weave our own unique threads into the eternal design. The story of the tribes is not a finished chapter. It is an ongoing conversation, a timeless dialogue between the past and the potential. And as long as we hold the courage to be ourselves, while striving for the harmony of the whole, their legacy will never truly be lost. It will continue to grow, to evolve, and to inspire, reminding us all that we are, each in our own way, part of a greater purpose, a grander destiny, and a story that belongs to all of us, now and for all the time that lies ahead.